Thanks for joining us today, everybody, on this edition of Ed Talks and Coaching. I'm really happy to be here with you. My name is Rob Brost. I'm the head boys basketball coach at Bollingbrook High School. And today we're going to talk a little bit about why relationships matter more than X's and O's. I think it's a really important topic. When I give clinics on X's and O's, it seems like there's always a huge interest. And then when I talk about things like relationships and why they matter more than the X's and O's, there's not as much. When in actuality, I think the relationships matter much more than the X's and O's. And so we're gonna jump right into it. I'm gonna tell you just a little bit about myself, and then we'll be off and running. This is my contact information. Feel free to contact me anytime. Both my school and home email are on the screen right now. I give this information to you because I'm sincere about this. I'd be happy to help you in any way that I can. Please reach out via Twitter. That is my cell phone number as well. So if you have any questions or just want to talk hoops, whether it's about this or anything else, feel free to contact me anytime. A little background about myself, just so you know where I'm coming from, kind of my experiences. I just completed my 13th season at Bollingbrook High School. We've won nearly 300 games since I've been here. Hopefully this year, knock on wood, if we have a season that will go over 300. Before that, I was manager of basketball operations at the Bulls Training Academy. I was 3 years at a small JUCO in the northwest suburbs, and I got my coaching start as the freshman coach at my alma mater in Cedar Falls, Iowa. So I grew up in Iowa. I'm an Iowa kid, but I've lived in Illinois for 20 plus years since. Again, welcome to Ed Talks and Coaching, and we're going to jump right off. I think one of the things that we all want from our students or our athletes, whether that's in the classroom or on the floor, on the field, is superior effort. We really want them to give extra effort, and we want them to give everything they have. And I think that's a commonality we have. And I think what I'm going to talk about in the slide I'm going to share with you next is the most important slide that maybe you'll see in your career because it's that important. So everything that we want in a student athlete is kind of really broken down with this next slide. It's unrealistic to expect extraordinary effort and performance, which is exactly what we all want and we all expect, without creating an environment where people are extraordinarily valued. And so if kids know that they're valued, they will go to extraordinary lengths for you, to play hard for you, to learn. And so when you provide an atmosphere with an environment where everyone feels valued, then you're going to get that extra effort, and you're going to get extraordinary effort. And I liken it to this. Sometimes when a flower doesn't grow, you don't blame the flower. You redo the soil, you water it different, maybe some different sunlight, but you don't blame the flower when it doesn't grow. You blame the environment in which you set up for the flower to grow. And so same is true here. So just really, this is just food for thought. It's unrealistic to expect extraordinary effort and performance without creating an environment where people are extraordinarily valued. So I think it's really important. And this kind of segues us into why relationships are important and why they affect our student athletes' performance so much. Connecting with others may be the most important thing you do in life. Relationships matter. In fact, many people feel there is nothing more important in the world than their close relationships, whether that be with a teacher, a parent, a friend, whatever the relationship may be. That is what we crave most. And to whatever degree people crave relationships, they really do matter, and they provide benefits to those involved. And the benefits of good relationship are echoed in this next statement. Quality of our relationships affects our mental, emotional, and physical health. We ask ourselves all the time as a coaching staff, are you just about basketball, or are you about the entire person? If you're not about the holistic person, you might want to rethink why you're doing what you're doing, whether that's in the classroom, whether you're an administrator, whether you work in central admin, whether you're a coach, whatever it may be. If you're only concerned about outcomes and not the holistic person, you might want to check your priorities. This Brene Brown quote is a very, very good one. A deep sense of love and belonging is an irreducible need of all men, women, and children. We are biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love, to be loved, and belong. And belonging takes many, many forms. You can belong to a classroom. You can belong to a team. You can belong to a school. You can belong to a family. And you can belong to a friendship or any type of group of people, a church. So the sense of belonging and feeling that connection with others really drives us both relationally and performance based as well. Without good relationships, we tend to falter. When these needs are not met, we don't function, and we don't function like we are meant to. We break, we fall apart, we grow numb, and we all know students who experience this. We might have experienced this. We may have friends or adults that experience this. When these needs aren't met, we hurt others, we get sick. There are certainly other causes of illness, but the absence of love and belonging will always lead to suffering. Another Brene Brown a quote here. As a coach, you will impact more young people in a year than the average person does in a lifetime. I throw this slide in here because as educators, as teachers, as administrators, and as coaches, I think you could take coach out of that statement and put teacher in there as well. I think the most important person in a classroom, as far as instructionally goes, is the person that's standing in the front, because they create the environment in which kids will perform and learn. Same is true with a coach, and that impact goes on for a lifetime. Everything you say as a coach, teacher, administrator becomes a message that your constituents, in this case, me as a coach, my athletes receive, interpret, and respond to. So you have to be careful what you say, because words have meaning, and they can have meaning on the destructive side or on the inspirational side. And to be positive and to be a role model, your words matter. This slide, if you can get and find your purpose, and this slide really speaks to that, the closer you can get to that center star where your passion, your mission, your vocation, and your profession all lead to this, what you're good at, what you like to do, and what the world needs. And then on top of that, and I think lastly, what you can get paid for. If you can get closer to this center star, you can really find your purpose. I think this is a really, really beneficial slide just to figure out your purpose. I used to think way back when I was younger, some 20, 25 years ago when I started coaching, I used to think it was all about plays. This was before, electronics were used very much. I collected as many plays, schemes as possible. I had 3-ring binders, multiple sets of huge 3-ring binders with set plays in one, out of bounds unders in the other, offensive stuff in one, defensive stuff in the other. And my goal was to collect as much information as I could. And, information is important. And that's part of the process of becoming a good coach. But it's not near the most important thing, in my opinion. My thought process has completely changed as I have become more mature as a coach. Now, I know it's more about building authentic rapport with my players and making a connection with my players on a daily basis. Culture is a buzzword nowadays. And the 3 things that really define culture is what we believe, how we behave, and the experience that our behaviors produced for each other. And like I said, culture is a really, really popular thing now. People say they want to change the culture and all of those things. And I think that's important. But we really want to pare that down a lot further. And we're about to do that here. I think the culture piece that everybody talks about is really the tip of the iceberg. But nobody really talks about what really builds to that culture, and that's what I want to cover here today. To get that culture that you want, that tip of the iceberg where things are going how you want them, it's based on relationships. And you need to build those relationships. And the only way to build those relationships is to build rapport one step at a time, each relationship, every person that you come in contact with on a daily basis. You build that rapport, that builds the relationship, which eventually leads to connection, and connection leads to the culture that you want. And it then ultimately leads to the performance that you want, whether that's in the classroom or on the court or field. So I think building that rapport with each and every constituent that you come in contact with, me as a head coach at one of the biggest high schools in Illinois, I need to build that rapport with each and every stakeholder that I come in contact with on a daily basis, whether that's a student, an athlete, an administrator, a parent, a colleague, any of those people, all the way up through admin and people from the community. So building rapport, I think, is the most critical part of your culture. And building that rapport each and every day, and how you interact eventually builds relationships, then gets to your culture, and then it breeds that connection that ultimately shows in performance. People often talk about it's not the name on the back of the jersey, it's the name on the front of the jersey. And I like to talk about how it's actually the person that's wearing the jersey that is the most important. So the person inside of the jersey. It doesn't matter really what it says on the back, what it says on the front. It matters who is in the jersey, and the person in the jersey. That's what matters. And if you're thinking about your players as just an X as an O, or someone that can get you a means to an end, then I think you really need to check your priorities, because the part that really matters is building that connection and those relationships. What motivates? We really think, that three things motivate people. And the first two are what we used to have in the old school. We used to motivate these ways. Fear. What's going to happen to me? If I don't do X, I won't get Y. So I have to do X to get Y. What's going to happen to me if I don't do it? So that motivates people to do things. The second one is greed. What's in it for me? Maybe I'll get a big time job. Maybe I'll get rich. Maybe I'll be famous. All of those types of things. What's in it for me? But what really, really motivates is this third, and that's passion or love. What can I contribute to the situation to make it better for the lives of other people? And if you take that mindset, the passion, love mindset, rather than the greed and fear mindset, I think your students or your athletes or your employees, no matter what position you hold, will really perform much better if you motivate them through passion and love. Great players are fueled by love. They love to compete. They love the process. They love the game. And most of all, they love each other. And if you would come to our pregame at Bollingbrook High School, and the last things I write on the board after we go through the scout are play hard, play smart, play together, have fun. And then I put LOVE in really big letters, and I put it in a square, and we talk about every single game, that nothing works unless you truly care for the people that are in this room, and that you're doing things for them rather than doing things for a means to an end. So this isn't just something that we put up on a sign or something like that. We actually talk about this, and we live this every day at Bollingbrook High School. Games and things matter to individuals, and it hurts because it matters. When you have sweat equity built up, we call that sweat equity in our program, that we've worked so hard, and when it doesn't work out like we want it, it really hurts. And it hurts because it matters to us, because we care for one another and we have connection. Keys to building rapport. And again, I don't claim to be some big relationship expert or relationship guru. This is just how I've found it to be effective at the high school level. And this is how we do it at Bollingbrook High School. I think one of the keys is your example, and we're going to get into all four of these keys to building rapport here in a second. Time, how you spend it, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Empathy, how you approach things. And communication. Again, that communication builds connection, which we're going to go over here in just a little while. Example is one of the biggest things. I think it's the number one thing that you have to offer to your student athletes and to your colleagues. And it's important because you set the tone. I talk to our point guard all of the time, especially at the beginning of the season, that there's two people that can't have a bad practice. And the first one is me, because I set the tone with my example. And the second one is our point guard, because he's really, really important in kickstarting our team and really sets the tone for everything that we do. The most authentic way that a person or a coach can show how they really feel and that they care about people is through their example. And so you should ask yourself, are you providing a positive example for your student athletes, whether that's on the floor, in the classroom, or in the community? We talk about at Bollingbrook. Bollingbrook is a do-it-all place. You have to do everything. You need to perform in the classroom, in the community, and then if you do those two things, then you get a chance to perform on the court. And so we talk about the 3 C's a lot, but the most authentic way to know if a person, how they feel about you is the example that they set. Do your words and your example match? Are you just telling your athletes what to do and expecting them to do it? Or are you providing the example? And this could be things as something as simple as, do you get upset at referees, but you ask your student athletes not to get upset? Do you ask your student athletes to be on time and then you're not on time? Those types of things are really important. And are you asking your student athletes to communicate and then you're not communicable with them? So, your example really carries a lot of weight with your student athletes and your students. This is a critical aspect. If you expect it from your players, they need to see it in you and from you. And I just gave several examples, but if you expect it from your players, then they need it from you and they need to see it from you. And so I think it's a critical part of setting the tone for your team or your employees or your school if you're an administrator. The second thing is time. I think building rapport it is critical, and the time aspect is a huge part of building rapport. Are you spending quality time or quantity of time? What is important to you? Are you interested, or are you truly involved with your student athletes? Are you listening, or are you trying to understand what they are saying? Are you spending time, or are you investing time? If you spend time, you really don't get anything back from that. But if you invest time, you will eventually see the fruits of that labor. And if you're investing things, it's just like investing money. If you just spend money, you don't really get anything back from that. But if you invest money, you get return on investment. And that's not to say that you only invest time in student athletes if they can give something back to you. It's actually what they get out of that investment, what the student athlete receives out of that investment of time. So I think time is a huge, huge factor. You can't build relationships unless you have time with the student athletes. And that's outside of the court and some other things that are critical to creating that. Empathy is really, really important to building rapport. This is learning how a player is feeling and understand where they're coming from. Don't get empathy confused with sympathy. Sympathy means you feel sorry for someone and you're not really going to help them. You just look at them, you feel bad for them, and then you move on to the next thing. I think sympathy is good in certain respects, but empathy is much more important. to actually understand what that player or that student is going through. If you're an administrator, what is that teacher going through? Everybody's going through something. So for you to try to gloss that over and only be sympathetic, I think that just means you moved on to the next thing. But if you are empathetic to their situation, you really try to feel and understand where they are coming from. This is an obvious one. You've probably heard it several times before, but do you listen more than you talk? I think that's critical to any leader, that they listen to others and then obviously empathize with their situation. Respond with compassion. I think coaches sometimes don't do very well at this. And just some simple things to respond with compassion are responding with phrases like, I hear you. I sense what you're feeling. Hey, this is our plan moving forward. I'm sorry that happened to you. I think I understand what you're going through. This is how we're going to move forward. Simple phrases like that so that they understand that you are attempting to feel what they are feeling. Lastly is communication. Communication is a really, really important part of building rapport because it creates connection. And once we create connection, then we can really perform at a high level. Sometimes you have to go where your players are. I oftentimes tell this story. This was 5 or 6 years ago now, that after a game, one of our players texted me, and he, first off, I think he left something in the locker room. He left something out and was asking about that. Then secondly, then we just started talking about the game. Then that led into his family. And we were texting back and forth for a good 2 or 3 hours. So my point with this example is sometimes you have to go where your players are. That player had never really shared with me some of those things, but he was comfortable over text message. And so that's where we happened to go, and it happened to be late at night. So, but I could tell that he was ready to share. So I had to go where he was. Affirm your players, staff, and then do it every day. We are in the affirmation business, and affirming your players doesn't mean that you go along with everything they say. Affirming people, that doesn't mean you go along with everything. That could be something as simple as a smile or a hello, how are you doing? If you can affirm people every day, I think it really creates a rapport between individuals that obviously leads to relationship, that then leads to the culture, which we talked about before. 93% of communication is nonverbal, so be careful when you are talking to people and when you are not talking to people, because your nonverbal really says a lot about where you're coming from. Are you addressing someone with your arms crossed? How are your facial expressions? And so remembering that 93% of all communication is nonverbal helps with the overall communication. Allow your players ample opportunities to communicate with you. And I always say the ultimate goal in our program is that our kids, or my student athletes, the student athletes under my charge, ultimately trust me and can come to me and talk to me about anything. And that could be about basketball, but more importantly about life issues. And so you have to allow them opportunities to do that, because it's not natural for teenagers especially, and for adults too, to come to superiors with issues, or come to people, colleagues that they work with issues that they may be having. Some practical application that we do here at Bollingbrook High School is that during stretching, we do this active stretch where kids are moving up and down the court, and I physically try to come in contact with every player with a fist bump or a high five, something like that. And I try to affirm every single player during this stretching time. So I'll walk up and down the lines with them, talk to them. It could be something as simple as, hey, how was your biology test? It could be something like, hey, we need a little bit more effort out of you today compared to yesterday's practice. But I try to affirm each and every one of our student athletes during that time. Individual time for meetings. We have preseason meetings, postseason meetings. I meet with our kids a lot, and they can come to me with just about anything. And certainly basketball is what brings us together, but the connection really happens when we start talking about their families, what they like to do outside of school and basketball, what careers they're interested in, and showing some interest in them off of the floor. Difficult discussions. It's really important for any leader to hold people accountable. And you can do that by having difficult discussions sometimes. Sometimes you need to make some decisions that they might not particularly like. But holding kids accountable and employees accountable is a very important part of the process in building that rapport. Please and thank you. The next slide you're about to see is page 1 of our player handbook at Bollingbrook High School, and it kind of sums up how important I think the please and thank yous are. We do a lot of traveling. We're on the road a lot to big tournaments and big shootouts. And this doesn't look exactly like this because I just took the sayings part, but this is how it reads. Page 1 of our player handbook. I can always be heard saying please when asking for something. When given something, I can always be heard saying thank you. When someone says thank you, I will always say you're welcome. To politely interrupt, I will say excuse me, and I can be heard saying yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, or no ma'am to my parents, teachers, coaches, and administrators, trainers, etc. I will be an example of a respectful rater. I think if you're showing gratitude towards others, it really is a sign that you understand that it's not all about you. And that's one of the things that we try to get our players to understand, is that it's not always about them. And that's really hard in this time and age where people are really, a lot of times, only wondering about how things affect them. Saying please and thank you, simple things just like that, saying you're welcome, are really critical in showing that gratitude. Steve Nash, I throw this in here, he averaged 239 high fives per game. Positive and supporting your teammates, that's a true leader, and that's making connections. And those high fives help connect you with other players. And as a leader, people under your charge, you are charged with making connection with them, and this would obviously help that. Some more practical applications. One word. We do this with our team virtually every year. The student athletes pick one word for themselves and one word for the team, and they have to get up and explain why that's their one word for the season. And they do that in front of the whole team. You'd be surprised what they come up with. And when they have to explain why they chose that word, it really gives you more insight into that player individually. And then you can talk to them about those individual things when you meet with them or on a sidebar conversation. Team identity. We do a lot of things with our squad. Every year we talk about how our team is the number of the team that the school is. So, for example, this last year's team was team 46 because it was the 46th team in our school's history. And so we try to come up with an identity every year and what our team is going to be known for. And that's, again, part of being that group and part of being connected to something bigger than yourself. Greetings and goodbyes. With those please and thank yous, we always say hello, and we always say goodbye to people as we enter the gym, as we leave the gym, when they leave my office or they enter the office. We always greet people, and we always say goodbye. Holiday gifts, player to player. One of the things we do, I give each player $10, and that player picks a name out of a hat, and then they are paired with another player, and they have to present that player with a gift thought out for that individual player. And again, when we present these gifts, we're up in front of the team and we talk about why we got that gift for that particular player. These are just some pictures I showed you to kind of let you know what our culture is like. And this is just a snippet. And just because you're up off the bench, that doesn't mean your culture is good. These are two different pictures, one from a year or two ago and then one from several years ago. But you can see how everyone in each one of these pictures is up and out of their seats. Obviously, they're not in the games right now, but they are excited for their teammates, understanding that this is more than just about them. Family atmosphere. My kids are a really big part of what we do here, and they're always around at practice and at games. And these are both my kids. I have a son and a daughter, and you can see my daughter there and both my son and daughter in this shot. This is more of that family atmosphere. This is my son in a team picture with one of the guys. And then here's my son and daughter during a timeout. This is a couple years ago. They're a little bit older now. Team outings. This is one of our team outings where we went bowling. This is the team at my house several years ago. You can see the guys there swimming. There's my little guy swimming as well. And so, we talk about family a lot, and these guys are at my house, either as a group or individually, as it may be. And very important that we do things together outside of basketball. Life circumstances. This happened to be the day after one of our former student athletes passed away, who had played with these guys the year before. And so this is our practice the next day. This is right after I told all the guys what had happened. We ended up not practicing that particular day, but everybody was there to practice. And then I told them the news, and we kind of met as a group. And so life circumstances really throw things at you that sometimes are very difficult to deal with. And this was one of those times. And so I just throw that in here because of the life circumstances that happened, the day prior. Come back and give back. The picture on the right here is 4 of our former players coming back, 4 of the better players that we've ever had. And then to the left here, one of our former players addressing our summer camp. It's not the only sign that your culture is good, but a good sign is when players are coming back and they're giving back and they're volunteering for the betterment of the program. Have fun. I think this is a huge part, and people oftentimes overlook it. The picture on the right was taken at our practice right before we played in the state semifinal game, so the Final Four. This is about 4 hours beforehand. This was at the shoot-around taken, and you can see we're kind of acting goofy and having fun. I wanted to keep it light and fun towards the end of practice there. And then on the left, this is one of my assistants with one of our players during our practice, right before we started practice at the state tournament. So again, we're just having fun, and I think that's a huge part of why people participate in athletics. And so having fun is a real critical part of that. This is a picture of me celebrating after, I believe that was the super sectional game that we won after the game, and we kind of all just let loose. And there you can see me in the middle and all of our guys around me. And here's a good picture of our bench. This is actually at the state tournament in the 3rd place game. And so we have good and bad right here. You see most of the players are up and cheering for their teammates. These are the 5 starters plus 1 additional player. But then you see this young man right here. And that bothers me with this picture because, obviously we did not make a connection with this young man. We're about to win the 3rd place game at the state tournament, and this young man is not real happy at this point. So, we try to do things so these types of things don't happen. And so I throw that in here for a level of humility for myself, but just to let you know that it's not always all roses when good things are happening to your team. So really proud of this shot, but not so happy about this piece right here with this young man. And again, I'll leave you with this. A coach will impact more young people in a year than the average person does in a lifetime. I think it's critical that you build rapport with every single stakeholder that you come across, and then that will move towards a relationship where you can have connection, and then that ultimately builds your culture. And like I said before, the culture is a big word right now, but ultimately you want to build that culture through the rapport, one relationship at a time. So I thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure to serve you. Ed Talks in Coaching. Once again, my name is Rob Brost, Bollingbrook High School head boys basketball coach. Have a great day.